Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2022. Welcome to the Texas Apartment Association's Education Foundation series, Hints from HR. We're here live on the second Wednesday of every month, bringing you backstage into the dressing room on the topics of all things HR that are impacting the multifamily industry. I'm Blaise Spitaleri with Gemstar Construction, and joining us today is the TAAEF Vice President, Becca Ramadi, and the National Director of Brookfield Properties, Nicole Block. So to kick off 2022, we have a special guest with an equally special topic. We're here to discuss the results of NAA's Mental and Emotional Health Survey that was released last December. And joining us from the West Coast, the Chief Learning Officer from Swift Bunny, please welcome Jen Piccotti. Jen, if you will, can you give us a brief background on who you are, what you do, and a little bit about Swift Bunny?
You bet. I am so happy to be a part of this event. So thank you so much for inviting me. My name's Jen Piccotti. I am the Chief Learning Officer with Swift Bunny, and I got my start with property management in 2000. I started on the operator side. They were an owner-operator developer based out of Southern California called Shea Properties, who I still love and work with on some projects. And I got to work very closely with the on-site teams with a lot of internal departments as their quality manager. So focusing on really exciting things like policies and procedures and process improvement, but also things like resident retention, the customer experience, and then company internal communication. So after being there for a while, I made a leap over to the supplier side with Satisfax Research and apartmentratings.com. And I really got to dive into the resident experience side of things. So what residents care about, what matters most to them, reputation management, all that good stuff. And after about 10 years there, made the leap over to Swift Bunny, where we focus on employee engagement and retention within our industry. So I've had this really unique 360-degree view of our industry and finding out from each different perspective what matters most to each of these groups, how they influence each other, what they really care about. And the common thread through my entire career in this industry is finding the story that data tells. What is it that we need to learn from what's going on right now? And then sharing that with the industry. So I love opportunities like this where I can tell you what I've been seeing from the industry view and connecting the dots between all of the different stakeholders within the rental housing industry. And with Swift Bunny right now, we are all about employee engagement and finding out what matters most to them, what's working, what's not working, and kind of getting this industry view because it is the only company that does employee feedback research for multifamily. So we're excited to share what we've been learning with all of you guys today.
Well, we're glad to have you, and we're glad to kind of talk about this particular survey because we've had a unique couple of years. So we want to dig into some of the results on this mental and emotional health survey. So maybe we can start with maybe who participated in the survey, and then what were we able to dissect as some of the key analytics that resonate in our respected organizations?
I was so excited to be included in this process because the National Apartment Association, they had formed a subcommittee on mental health, and they realized there's not a lot of resources, there's not a lot of data right now to give us a sense of how people are doing in our industry. And so John Sons, who is the Director of Training and Marketing Strategies for Burlington Capital Properties, he was the head of this committee. And he and the committee said, you know what, there are a few things that we really want to focus on. We want to make the conversation about mental and emotional health comfortable. We want to try and figure out how do we move away from this us and them stigma, and then figure out when we're looking at our industry, how do we deal with the traumas that we encounter, whether it's on the job or the personal things that are going on in our lives. And they realized they needed an industry-specific study. So they partnered with us at Swift Bunny. We rolled out this survey in the fall, October, November, and we had over 2,300 multifamily employees participate in this survey and give us a really clear view on how we're doing when it comes to our rental housing employees.
Well, I'm really excited too, because this, we've talked a lot over the course of the past year, about things that, involve other industries or trying to get job seekers to come and consider, multifamily, and whether it's on an operator or a supplier side. So what's really interesting is how topical a lot of this information is that we're going to discuss, because it's truly coming strictly from the inside. It's truly coming strictly from multifamily associates. And so I think you mentioned this before, but if not, sorry to duplicate efforts here. But at first, this is only the operators that you have interviewed, if you will, but there is a separate piece coming in the future for suppliers, because obviously there's two sides to our house. But I think it's really important to note that this is truly multifamily only, which I think is really interesting, because I think the data is that much more reliable.
Yeah, it's reliable, and it captures our attention, because if leaders are looking at data, they're like, well, it doesn't really apply to me. Well, you know what? This applies exactly to you. So I think it's good. It's really useful.
So maybe to jump into maybe some of the components that we recognize or see over and over again. I think we've all started with a little bit of stress to our lives once the pandemic hit and all the changes started began to happen. So what is something from the survey? Have you seen anything that could be a case for understanding the multifamily wellness and emotional health and well-being?
Yeah, there were a few surprising things or eye-opening things, at least from where I'm sitting. So the survey was made up of 10 statements, and we wanted to find out how much do you agree with this statement and how important is this statement to you, so that we could gain some context on focusing on what matters most to this particular set of respondents. And one of the things that came out scoring the lowest had to do with feelings of stress. So we made the statement, overall, I feel less stressed than I did a year ago. And I was really surprised that so few people could agree with this statement. In other words, people are feeling in general more stressed now than they were a year ago. And if we think about where people were a year ago and all the uncertainty that was still there, we were still trying to navigate through the pandemic and figure out, is this going to be resolving soon, or are we going into a worse thing in the winter? But particularly regionals and on-site managers are saying very clearly, I am more stressed now than I was a year ago. And we're not only seeing that in the mental and emotional health survey, but we're seeing it in all of our employee surveys that we're seeing right now, where on-site managers, especially over the last 6 to 9 months, around 9 months, they're really feeling that sense of burnout. They have hit the wall, and now their regionals are starting to feel that way too. They've really been trying to support and keep their teams afloat, and now they are starting to experience signs of burnout. So that was something that was surprising, that we haven't kind of gotten over the hump and kind of going toward a better finish line, but that burnout is still very, very real.
Well, and really, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we would hope, with a narrow focus, that we're better than we're in a better place than we were 2 years ago, than we were 1 year ago, and then we're continuing with progress. And what we talked about in our intake call was that stress is stress, and it has changed. Even though it might have been alleviated over here, it created lots of unintended consequences and ripple effects in our lives. And we're not at 100%. We're still fatigued from the first round, right? And I think that we don't have the same physical, mental, emotional stamina that we maybe had going into this initially. And we have learned to try to control what we can control, but realize there's so much more uncontrollable variables, in our lives. And I would say I totally agree with that. And I think that people are more fatigued for like change or another wave of this. It's like they, I think the stamina is a big, huge piece. But to your point, I think stress is stress. And I think that it might have just moved from point A to point B, or maybe point Z in some cases, but not shocking at all to hear that. And I think that, to your point as well, is that, the on-site associate, is having an experience, and whatever that experience is, their supervisor, if their supervisor is truly supporting them in the way they should, they're going to feel responsible for their engagement, for their motivation, for not just their performance, but just their overall mental health, which takes a toll as well. So I think it's ripple effects kind of in both directions. And you hear the term exhausted, and you hear people say, oh, I'm so exhausted. That's something I think I hear all the time, just overall. So I'm not shocked at all that was one of the things that you found in the survey, because I just think that we need to hear that, though. I think some people are delusional and thinking, oh, well, we've learned how to do tours now. We've learned how to mask up. We've learned how to do the transactional piece of our job a little bit better. But the emotional piece, or like you said before, just the interactions that we're having, it's still an adventure every day.
It's also important, I think, to mention that the interaction, this industry, in a way that many others don't have such a close interaction with their clients, with the residents. And so what's happening to them affects the on-site staff as well.
Sure.
And so especially where we've had a period of sickness and death and financial hardships, I mean, it would be hard, I imagine, to not take that on yourself.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, again, when the transaction, emotionality and rationality can't really exist in the same plane. So, you have someone that you're evicting, because they, lost, maybe they didn't lose their job, but their roommate did, or something happened. And then, you're moving towards this other piece of the job that you kind of have to do now, because you're 2 years down the road and legislation has changed, et cetera, et cetera. That weighs on people, because there's not anyone that I've met, and again, I haven't met everybody, that hasn't been somehow impacted by this pandemic, whether it be personally, professionally, a friend of a friend, a colleague, a family member. And so I think that gives it so much more weight and just really just heavy on their heart.
And I'm really glad that we're shedding light on this topic too, and trying to get to the root causes of this. Have we noticed anything within this survey, maybe a correlation between the communication and leadership that can help us navigate through these last couple of years? Maybe future leaders can be cognitive of going forward. I want to definitely hear from both of you on this, but Jen, maybe start it up. Can we discuss the importance of leadership and communication?
It is so critical. And for leaders who have really embraced the challenge and really recognize, okay, this is something new. We have not dealt with this before. The companies that have most successfully navigated over the past couple of years are the ones where the leaders have been visible, the ones who have communicated consistently and frequently, the ones who have been visible on site. They've been out there, checking in. What does it look like on site? What are our teams dealing with on a day-to-day basis? What is different about today than it was, let's say 3 years ago? Just going out and showing up to work and interacting with the team members, seeing that the phones are ringing off the hooks way more than they were. So those are the things when the leaders are there and they're engaged, they're listening, they're asking questions, they're sharing information. We've seen those teams fare much better than the teams where leaders have just hidden away. They've been delegating from on high. They're not asking how things are going. They're just expecting business as usual. Business has not been as usual. And the other thing the reason that that's important to make that distinction, that the leaders who are communicating, their teams are doing better than the ones who are not communicating, who are not being visible. There's a business case to be had here, because we've seen from this survey in particular that 1 out of 3 respondents said that their productivity, their personal productivity, has been affected in the last month based on their levels of stress. And so if you're losing in any given month 1/3 of your workforce, if you're losing productivity from 1/3 of your workforce, that is a financial impact. That is a financial reason that you need to pay attention to these types of things. So if you are doing nothing else as a leader, start doing things like a town hall. Whether it's weekly, just inviting every employee to say, hey, come and listen to what's going on. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be this hour-long, very intricate agenda. It can be 15 minutes of, hey, here's what's going on this week. Here's a new policy that we need to roll out for this reason. Here's some milestone anniversaries that we want to recognize. And just having that invitation saying, you, every employee, you are valuable enough, important enough to come and hang out with me for a minute and hear what's going on. That helps people to feel like an insider. It helps them feel like, okay, I know what's going on. There's no mystery that's going on here. Those are the teams that have been more resilient, more engaged, and have had less turnover, frankly, than some of the other companies.
Well, and I would say too that, with stress being stress, like we talked about before, and so many changing variables, that there's always something that's coming up now. And many leaders are kind of standing at the bottom of this mountain and just seeing all of these things that could go wrong and are going wrong. The dumpster fires, literally and figuratively, throughout the past 2 years. And they almost have this paralysis. It's almost like they call it analysis paralysis. They're like thinking all the things that can go wrong. And, and I tell my teams, like, don't let, perfection get in the way of progress. We've got to take one step at a time, find those one or two, three things like you talked about in your study that we can affect. How can we affect them? And then double down on those things and take a step forward, and then take another step forward. And so I think as far as, leaders, again, I think, like you said, the ones that were the most effective in how they communicated to their teams, or just communicated, made them feel involved, made them feel connected. It's not about being perfect. It's about being relatable. It's about being human and being vulnerable. When, we're all going through this together, this is something that it's not a us versus them, like you had mentioned, approach or mentality. But I do think that as leaders, we have to lean into that. And sometimes you have to push, at times, your exhaustion to the side to serve the exhaustion and the motivation and engagement of your team members. There's time for you later. Don't worry. I'm not saying that, we're just going to beat up on the corporate people. But I think your on-site teams need you now more than ever. And they need visible leadership. They need to know that you're there. And, like we always see those memes that come through on LinkedIn and Facebook, whatever, but they say that, like, when I'm talking to a manager, I feel like they're important. And when I'm talking to a leader, I feel like I'm important. And I think we need to really live those types of things. They're not just memes. Like, bring your memes to life, guys. I mean, I think that, we just see them, we float through, you like them, you forward them. Yay. Well, that's not living them. And I think that the companies that have taken the strides and made the time to live that and embody it are miles ahead of everybody else.
Well, and even if it's just one thing, right? Jen, you mentioned this yesterday, like identify one thing, two things, three things, and do something. Don't let that analysis paralysis sort of win. It can be something small, but as long as it's something, that's a step in the right direction.
And don't be shy about communicating. This is what we're doing and why we're doing it. So let's solicit feedback. Is this what is serving you? And I think, number one, your associates are going to see that you're trying, right? You're trying to, you've assessed it, you're addressing it, you're moving along. And if it's not working, then we pivot. I think sometimes we're doing things behind the scenes and our teams don't know. Like, we'll talk a little bit about EAP probably in this podcast. And it's like some of the things and the great things we are doing in service of our associates, how we communicated that accordingly, and is it serving them? So I think that's probably something that's really important as well, to Becca's point. Do those 1 to 2 or 3 things, but then share the what you're doing and why you're doing it. And is it working? And can we fix it? Can we change?
I think it is important to have the communication about the benefits too, and what the organizations can offer. There was a great tagline: "The mental health is health." Right. I saw it on the website today, on LinkedIn for TAAEF, and I think it's a great motto, because we do need to address those things. And with that, I mean, maybe a little more detail we can get into, but what are some of the processes that could attribute to a greater success and productivity and positivity within your team and organization? Not to be negative too, maybe some things to steer away from as well that we might have seen through this survey.
Yeah, mental health is health. I think that really does sum it up, because one of the things that was interesting that companies should be aware of is that 1 out of 4 employees who responded to this survey, they weren't sure if their company provided resources for mental and emotional health.
Yeah.
That's 25% of your workforce. They're like, I'm not sure, maybe, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So even companies who feel like they're doing a great job of communicating the resources and the benefits that they have available, do more, talk about it more. On a monthly basis, talk about it, because people aren't really sure what's available. But we also want to look at things that can influence what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of theoretical stuff. There's a lot of nice lip service that we say, take a break, take some PTO, but there's also practical things like what contributes to the day-to-day stress. People are talking about their workloads. I feel stressed about my workload. So what are the things that are contributing to that? I know that yesterday we were talking about some of the things that Now look at what's on people's plates, like reports. This is something that I see at so many organizations, and I hear so much from community managers in particular, like, oh my gosh, the reports. Can we get enough with the reports? So look at your reports. Just because you've always ran those reports, you've always requested those reports, do you really need them? Who's looking at them? First of all, ask yourself. What decisions are being made based on them? If there are no decisions being made off of a report that's run on a weekly or monthly basis, why are you running them?
Yeah.
Knock it off. Because a lot of what I see is, especially in this day and age, this electronic day and age, I see reports being run, emailed to someone at the corporate office, being printed out, taken off the printer and put into a box to be loaded off to Iron Mountain. Are you kidding me? Like, what are we doing here? So those kinds of things of looking at the number and volume and types of reports that are being run, who's being asked to do them? Can they be centralized? If they're necessary, can they be centralized? When we're rolling out initiatives or things that are supposed to help streamline, have you gone back and asked, did it do what it was supposed to do? Because another thing that I'm hearing right now is that, okay, we had the old system, now you rolled out the new system, and I'm still doing the old system too. So now instead of using one system, I'm using both, because the new system doesn't have all the things that I need to do my job that the old system has. So now I'm doing two things instead of one. So have you gone back to make sure this new initiative, this new system, this new tool is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing? Those are the types of things that we need to go and look at. And our job descriptions is what's on the job description. Is that what they're actually doing every day? Or has that changed? So those are some practical conversations that you can be having from a big picture that's worth the time investment as a leader perspective.
You know, thinking about the job description piece and thinking about people coming into the industry with such a shortage and such a need for people, the job descriptions are a great place to look. And are there things that are in there that don't need to be, that could make the position more attractive or might just need a refresh for where we are today in 2022? And it takes a lot of time. That was a past episode of Hints from HR.
For sure.
But I think that's probably a really good thing for people to spend some time on.
Well, and as an operator, you know, and I know with our company, we are asking and have been asking these questions. And I would encourage my peers on both sides, operator and supplier side of the house, to do the same. Is that, you know, I love that you asked about, you know, agreement and importance. You know, because if we take a look at where they spend most of their time, is it in service of what the company wants them to do? Is this report, to your point, or this series of reports, could it be automated to where they could do something else? Or could it just be accessed anytime someone wanted to see it, right? Because I think that what's frustrating for us in the past is that, you know, we send all this information, and when the person that wants to see it is ready to look at it, they usually just send an email to the person saying, hey, can you send me the most updated XYZ? Again, we've all been there, and you're like, we send it every single week, but I'm happy to take that. And, you know, so it's just one of those things to where it's just like dagger. And we need to be open to ask those questions and then act upon it. You know, I know that the wheels move slow, but I would say to my company's credit, we're asking the questions. We're trying to alleviate things in each quarter in our town halls, like you were talking about. We talk about what has changed, what we've, you know, what we're addressing, where we're at. So we also can't do everything at once. And so we're really trying to do what's in best service to our associate. But it's hard questions and, you know, and hard answers, but it's the only way that we're going to really keep an engaged team and be productive.
And I do want to just add back onto the job descriptions as well. I think it's really important because I feel like with everything changing, people are getting new responsibilities and things added to their job description. Sure. And to speak to all of y'all is, they definitely need to review it and see what maybe does not need to be there anymore. And if they're updating their systems and they don't have this sort of reporting system, well, is there a reason that we don't report that anymore? Can we adapt to the change and go forward with it? So with that, I know we touched base a little bit on PTO and then flexibility some organizations have or lack thereof, and then maybe coming back to different kind of burdens of tons of work that are being sat around, not being responsible enough. If people are asking you, can you help me with this? And you say, this is not my job description, or that person that does that is out right now. They're asking for a reason. So it's also maybe trying to get people involved and educated in what other resources they can go to. I don't know if I kind of touched base on a little bit of a few things there, but if we wanted to touch base a little bit on PTO and what that does to people's mental health when they're gone or afraid to go on PTO, or please jump in.
Go,
This
Jen,
was
go.
a big one. This was a big one on the survey because, so many of the comments were, I would love to go on PTO. A weekend's not going to cut it for me because even when I'm just on my weekly breaks, my weekend or my days off, people are reaching out to me with questions or concerns. So I never get to turn it off. And if I go on vacation, I can't go for a week. I can hardly go for 2 days because the mountain of work that will be waiting for me when I get back is just overwhelming. So I might as well not even go, because the relief that I will get for 2 days will not make up for the just mountain of stress that I'm going to walk into when I get back from my vacation. So if we're looking at PTO, there's so many companies that are doing a great job of encouraging their team members to take that time off to go and take a break. But what they have not done is provided the support or the safety net or the coverage to take care of the day-to-day tasks, approvals, whatever it is that will allow them to come back and just have a minimal amount of work to catch up on. Are all the day-to-day things is there someone that can cover it, that can make the decisions, that can say the yeses and the nos and the scheduling and the whatever it needs to be done, so that it's not just sitting there waiting for them when they get back. And I think that right now is the biggest barrier for people to be able to take their PTO, because they're just worried about what's waiting for them when they get back. So that's something that we really need to address and I think we're not the only industry that has that problem, but it's definitely something that's getting in the way of people having that time to recharge.
Well, and think about I think that the 4-day work weeks, whenever we have a Monday holiday, are like a blessing and a curse. Like Memorial Day, the Labor Days, the MLK. I mean, we have the Mondays off, and then we're working Tuesday through Friday. What are we really doing? We're really making 5 days of work cram into 4 days of work. And so I feel like that is something that, it's a 4-day work week, and no one's really excited about having a 3-day weekend anymore, because they know those next 4 days are going to be running at a quicker, faster pace. It almost makes it feel like Monday wasn't worth it. And I think that's another kind of ripple effect of PTO. And I think
we're running out of time, but I wanted you to touch on what you talked about yesterday in terms of explaining some of the benefits that companies may have, what the process looks like to ask for mental health help, who knows, and how do we deal with the stigma, those types of issues. I thought you had some good suggestions for that.
Me or Jen? I think both.
So many companies, they have these great employee assistance plans available, but first of all, making sure that everyone knows that you have them, that it's available to them, but also removing the mystery. Because I think a lot of people who have not reached out for help, they may be aware of the program, but they don't know what's going to happen when they make that call. Are they going to have to instantly dump all of their worries and anxieties in that call at that moment?
Yeah.
Or is their supervisor going to get this bat signal that, oh my gosh, Jen just made the call? They're worried about what's going to happen next when or if they make that call. So if you can think about defining what are the steps, what happens when you make that call, what kinds of questions might you be asked on that first call? Or if you reach out to HR, what is their response going to be? What does the process look like? And remove that fear, remove that uncertainty, so that when or if someone takes that step and says, you know what, I need some support, they're not worried about that part. Remove that worry from the equation, because I don't think that we do a good job of explaining what will happen if you make that call or send that email. So they need to know what the process is, and they also need to be assured of their confidentiality, that this is just between you and a provider. It has nothing to do with your employer. So
I think also normalizing it. We talked about, if we're talking about it more often, what does it look like? Again, not specifically your privacy issues, but what does it look like, and what are you going to experience? Then we're normalizing the topic, and it won't be mental health. It'll just be your health. Right. And so I think that that's really important to bring it up in your meetings and keep it in front of people's faces before they think they need it. So that when they do, there won't be such an aversion to asking.
Or if you're talking about it with your coworkers and your coworker says, you know, you should call the line, you know, and just make it an easy topic of conversation.
Yeah.
It's not a weird thing. It's just, hey, you should try that out.
And real quick, before we wrap this up with some housekeeping items, there's another survey coming up this first quarter, correct? That
Yes,
will include
March.
suppliers and operators. So how can we find this or participate in this survey?
So thank you so much for bringing that up, because we are going to be doing a follow-up survey in March through the National Apartment Association. It will be open to operators and suppliers. Be on the lookout. There's going to start being some emails that go out from the National Apartment Association. We'll also be notifying the individual affiliates like TAA. So you'll be able to have a link to register to participate and have your company participate. And if you are a member of TAA, of NAA, you will be able to request a copy of a company specific survey. So the results that come in from your employees, you'll be able to have a report that shows how your employees are feeling, completely confidential on the employee side. You won't know which employees participated.
Sure, that's great.
You'll get those results and have an understanding of what does it look like in my company right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jen, Becca, and Nicole. You guys are great as always. Real quick, the Be the Next Room to Grow Ambassador Video Challenge is coming back. We're looking for industry newcomers in any aspect of the Texas multifamily industry, and we can't wait to hear your stories. So if you've been in the industry for more than 5 years, please share it.
Less
Share
than
this
5
challenge
years.
with others.
Less
But no, if you're over 5, share it with your people that have been in under 5. Submit your
That's right.
videos.
Over under.
You
Over
can
under.
find all the information at taaef.org. Click on the link called Be the Next, and we'll be back on February 9th. Until then, stay healthy. And thank you all very much again.
Thanks, Blaze. Thanks, Jen. Thanks,
Thank
Becca.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.